another edition of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. I'm Todd.
I'm Craig.
And today, for the very first time here in the Two Guys and a Chainsaw studios, we are joined by a guest, Kristin Sorhus-Hafen. Kristin, say hi to everybody.
Hello.
And Kristin, you were the one who asked to be our first guest.
I did.
Did you hear our previous podcasts, or...?
Nope. I just
put it all out there.
And I feel real dumb about it. I should have.
How flattering. Thank you. Thank you, Kristin.
We're glad you're a fan.
We are. This is a great choice.
I figured it had to be great.
No, that's good.
I know both of you,
you're right.
And it had to be great.
Craig, I guess our reputation precedes us.
Absolutely.
Now, Kristin, you also chose the movie for today, which is Saw, the 2004 film by James Wan and Leigh Whannell. First of all, let me ask you, have you watched many horror movies yourself?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so when I came to you and I said, what movie do you want to watch on this podcast you've never heard?
Right.
And you said Saw, my mouth kind of hit the floor, and I'm kind of curious why. Why did you choose Saw?
Well, honestly, it's because I heard Cary Elwes is in it, and he was my first celebrity crush. And I thought, man, I have to see his complete body of work.
Good a reason as any, sure.
And I hadn't seen this yet, so I thought, that kind of fits in horror, right? I think.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it, so I wasn't sure.
Have you seen any horror movies? Do you have any basis for comparison?
I have seen The Ring.
Okay.
Oh, that's not bad.
I've seen that one, Skeleton Key, I think. Like,
yeah,
that was a good one.
It.
Yeah.
Kate Hudson.
That's about it. I can't think of another horror film that I've seen.
So we go from sort of supernatural ghost thrillers right into the torture porn genre,
yes.
don't we? You know what? It's been a while since I've seen this. Craig, when did you see this when it came out?
I think I did. I'm pretty sure I saw it in the theater. You said torture porn, and I was reading that when Whannell and Wan went to make this movie, they didn't set out to make a torture porn film, but they kind of defined the genre. I don't recall hearing those words before this movie came out. And I think I saw it in the theater because at the time it seemed somewhat unique, a different spin on things. Now we've been so inundated not only with the sequels but also the crappy copycats that it's getting a little bit old.
It almost seems quaint, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean...
It wasn't nearly as gory as I remember.
No. Now, I first saw this. I have a bit of a storied history with this one because I first saw it in the theater. I went, my wife doesn't like horror films. I couldn't really get anybody to go with me, so I watched in the theater and I was really blown away. I was blown away because, you're right. The torture porn thing really started getting attached to films like Saw after Saw. Mm-hmm. Saw came, then Saw 2, then sort of Hostel. But Saw really sort of kicked it off. But up to that point, I'd never really seen a movie like this that was so grimy and so dirty and just so kind of unrelentlessly, at the time, brutal. Yeah. Almost nihilistic, And it's not that those movies haven't existed or that I probably hadn't seen them, but just this whole sort of everything at once with the modern style really hit me. On top of that, the puzzle aspect of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, at its heart, I think, a mystery, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think... as the series went on, and I don't even remember if I've seen them all, I feel like I got lost in the plot. The plot becomes so convoluted. I mean, I guess somebody could say, good for them for being able to sustain a plot from the first movie and still have tie-ins back to the first movie. But for me, I couldn't follow it. I got completely lost. I didn't know where it was going. But yeah, the first one, I mean, it's kind of set up as a mystery. It's almost got like a crime show feel to it, like CSI.
Yes.
Or something like those murder shows that my folks are, huge fans of. And maybe those shows owe a little bit of inspiration to this.
I think you're kind of right. When I watched this time around, I was impressed with how slow it went. I mean, it really took its time. It was really pretty methodical from what I remember. I saw the first Saw. I was so taken by it that when I saw that they were doing a Saw 2, the next Halloween, I had to go out and see it. I went to the theater. I still couldn't convince anybody to go with me, so I watched it by myself. And Saw 2 really ups the ante.
Yeah.
I mean, Kristin, as far as this goes, it's a way more convoluted plot. It goes a lot more fast-paced. And you talk about gore and disgusting situations these people are put in. that's when it starts really hitting hard.
Well, and they kind of fell into a trap too, because with the second movie, they were really trying to up the ante on all of the traps and the gore and all of that stuff. And so then every year after that, as these would come out around Halloween time, they were huge blockbusters. They made huge money. Nobody wanted to go up against Saw in the Halloween season, but they then had to keep upping it. They had to try to keep it fresh and interesting. And eventually, I mean, it was just brutal, just absolutely brutal.
Yeah, almost unbelievable. And the thing that I liked about it, as a guy who watches a lot of horror films, once I got into the second one, it became a Halloween tradition for me. And I would stop asking people to go, because I kind of enjoyed going by myself. And the reason I did was, up until these films, I had really never seen a movie since I was a kid that made me cringe, turn my eyes away from the screen. They would kind of bother me at that visceral level, the terrible traps these guys get put in, and the things that happen to their bodies, and it just pretty much zooms in on it and shows it in all of its explicit detail. I mean, as much as they can get away with an R rating, it's insane.
Right, and they had to cut quite a bit to get the R rating. It's I'd be really interested to see what they had to cut, because in comparison to the sequels, this one is pretty tame. Now, I think it should also be said that if you've not seen the movie and you're not a fan of gore, it's certainly not tame in and of itself. No. It is gory. It's just, as an entry in the series, it's probably the least so.
It's probably the goriest thing, Chris. Is it the goriest thing you've ever seen, Kristin?
I mean, on a screen, probably.
You've been through childbirth, so...
I have. I've seen some pretty gory stuff. Well, and I do, makeup and stuff. So I've done a lot of real research on real things, but as far as on a screen all at one time, that's probably the goriest stuff. Now, I feel like, are there a lot in the sequels, are there a lot of that kind of machine, the mechanisms of things?
Absolutely.
That was scary for me, that head trap thing.
The device you're wearing is hooked into your upper and lower jaws. When the timer in the back goes off, your mouth will be permanently ripped open. Think of it like a reverse bear trap.
Yeah, the reverse bear trap. That was one of their first. This was Lee Winnell is the screenwriter, and he developed the story with James Wan, who was the director, and they kind of started out just throwing a story together based on nightmares that they had, these really scary traps and whatnot. They put the script together, and, they were, both of them, brand new in the industry, and, somebody in Hollywood read it and just absolutely loved it, and it immediately became this super hot property, and we see where it went from there. It just exploded. But yeah, with every sequel, the traps get more and more intricate and violent and scary
and complicated. And I think the reverse bear trap scene was the scene that they shot kind of as a spec that they took around to. So before they'd shot anything of the movie, they shot that scene. I don't know if it's the actual scene that ended up in the movie.
No, it wasn't.
They shot a version of it, and then they shopped it around to get financing, and so they were really selling the look and the feel of the movie just as much as the script, And it has that. You're right. That mechanical element.
I definitely felt like that was way scarier than the other parts. Just, with a machine, there's nothing you can do. It's all. It just happens.
Well,
once the thing goes, it happens.
And the way it's presented, it's so visceral. It's scary to look at, let alone think of yourself in that situation. Yeah,
I can feel the metal in my mouth. Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah, you're right, and it's interesting what you said. I mean, it's one thing to be up against a person, who you can convince, who's a human, who you can kind of maybe psychologically get through to, or you can hope to leap across the room at them or something like that.
Right.
But when a person has just set in motion a machine that's going to do its thing and has left the room, and it's all up to you.
Right, and the clock is ticking, and I think that was a good device. I mean, not only do you see the clock constantly, but you're also hearing that tick, 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 tick.
Oh, that
it's
for
just
sure
right. It's a
that,
countdown that your time is. It's creepy.
And also, it forces you to kind of look within yourself too. I think all of these traps and all of these films sort of ask really have you asking yourself the question: what would I do in that circumstance? Would I have the guts to be able to do what I have to do? And I mean, this was nothing compared to what came later.
Right.
But, the guts to literally go into this guy's guts, who's still alive across the room, dig through them for that key that's going to let you out of the trap.
Oh, I know. I was when she was about to cut into him, I was like, what are you waiting for? He's dead. It's not a problem. Just do it. And then he started to move, and I thought, oh, crap. I don't know if I could do it.
You're like, oh, it's this kind of film.
I know.
Right.
Well, and I thought if she had just done it, she would have never known that he was still alive. It would have been a horrible experience, I'm sure. But she wouldn't feel guilty about it, you know? And I thought, she just jumped on it.
Yeah, but it changed her life.
It did,
Oh,
for the
it
better.
changed her life. I had a note about that, too. Go ahead.
She becomes a key player in the sequels. As it turns out, we find out that she actually becomes an assistant, basically, to the killer later on, because she's so grateful to him for having turned her life around. You know, I don't know, you know, on one hand, drug addict, on the other, serial killer. You know, you gotta balance it out, weigh it out, I guess. But she sees it as an improvement, and I really like that actress too. Shani Smith, is that her name? She was in a lot of stuff from the 80s. She was in 80s horror, and she was in, you're probably too young, Todd, do you remember Summer School?
Yes.
She was one of the students in Summer School.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh my
I do
gosh.
remember that movie.
Do you?
Yeah.
Wow.
So she's been around, and she, they asked, I don't remember if it was Lee Whannell or James Wan, they asked, you know, is there anybody that you have in mind for this part? And whoever it was just kind of offhandedly said, I wonder what Shani Smith is doing. And the next day, the casting director came and said, we got her.
Wow. Well, she wasn't doing much.
No, she didn't have a whole lot to do. And she was apparently deathly ill for all of her scenes.
Which worked out well.
Yeah. She had a fever of like 104 through the whole thing. But she also didn't have to do a lot of shooting. They filmed this really quickly in just a matter of, I don't remember exactly how many weeks, but you know, just a few weeks. Danny Glover did all of his stuff in just a couple days, I think.
Well, yeah. That's the only way you could probably afford Danny Glover,
Right.
you know, with this kind of production.
I think that was kind of an odd choice, personally, to
Yeah.
have Danny Glover there as a cop, and then, you know, the bad guy chaser.
Well, I mean, it kind of played against type for him because he was so well known for the Lethal Weapon series.
Mm-hmm.
And then here, I don't know if he's supposed to come across this way, but he comes across as so bumbling. Like, Kristin, you commented on it several times. Like, yeah, no cop would ever do that. That's just, like, the craziest thing. I was surprised, too. And the first time that it seems that he gets killed, which happens a couple of times,
Right.
the first time, I was thinking, don't worry, Danny Glover, at least now you don't have to be in any of the sequels. But
That's right.
But then he apparently got killed again towards the end. But I don't even know if he is really dead. I think in the universe of the film, he's not. I think that he survived it, and like he appeared in the Saw video game, which the director and producers consider canon. It's so convoluted.
Well, it is super convoluted because they didn't realize that this was going to be such a big hit that it would demand sequels. And so the writer Lee Whannell, who also plays in it, he's opposite Carrie Elwes in The Room.
Yeah, he's one of those main guys. He's the guy that wrote it.
He's Adam. Yeah, Adam is the one who wrote the horrible dialogue that he can't even deliver.
I had right here so much writer-driven dialogue that somebody in some room thought, this is what he would say. And then you get out there as an actor and you're like, I can't make this make sense. But you have to say it.
It's so true, right?
Yes.
I mean, there were horrible lines in there, horribly obvious, like,
First dead body I've ever seen. Looked different in real life. They don't move.
they don't move.
Well, of course they don't move. They're dead. There was one, too, about, this is as much fun as I've had without lubricant. It came out of nowhere, and he just said it super fast. I mean, maybe if he had coined it in the moment, like, oh, this is as much fun as I've had without lubricant, you know? That makes sense. Like, he came up with it. But it's like it was in his back pocket the whole time, waiting to use it in this horrible, dirty bathroom.
Right. Well, and this is kind of his first effort. You know, he and Juan have both gone on to have, you know, major success with, I know, Todd, you recently reviewed Dead Silence, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was them, wasn't it?
That was them,
And the Insidious series, which is still, you know, a pretty hot ticket right now. And he's in that, too. I mean, he plays one of the paranormal investigators. And in those movies, he's kind of a comic relief kind of thing, and I think that kind of works for him.
It works a lot better than him trying to play the serious guy.
Right.
Yeah.
It just comes across real
annoying
and not realistic. It comes across as a guy acting. is really what it is.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess in some regards that can work because he's lying, from the beginning.
True.
Both of the guys are. Both of the guys are concealing things, so maybe it was somewhat intentional. Let's give him the credit and say that he was doing it on
The
purpose.
benefit of the doubt.
Well, let's give him the credit, too, for writing, even if his dialogue kind of sucks, like, the plot is pretty solid.
Yeah, good storyteller. Definitely.
Did you, Kristin, were you kind of on the edge, were you back and forth as far as is it not this guy?
Who was doing it? Yeah, of course. In fact, at the very beginning, the first scene, I wrote down stuff about Cary Elwes looking like he wasn't telling the truth all the way, that there was some sort of concealment going on.
What about you, huh? There's not much to tell. I was on my way home from work, and I don't remember anything else.
I also wrote down, it could have been bad acting or disguising an accent, but let's hope not.
Maybe a little bit of both.
That might have been part of it.
Yeah.
But, they maybe were playing that did he do it angle, because you find out later that he was a suspect. So they could have been playing that angle a little intensely, maybe.
Well, who at any point in this movie is not a suspect?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Even the people in peril. That's part of the genius of it, I think.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Adam, Lee Wannell's character, has something to hide. Cary Elwes' character, what his name was, Larry, he has something to hide. Not related to the game, but the fact that, Cary Elwes is a surgeon, and he's obviously almost apparently cheated on his wife.
Right.
And Adam takes, pictures. He's kind of one of these surveillance photographers who's paid to...
Private investigator kind of deal. Yeah, and
Without
that's...
knowing what's going on.
Right. But I think that's, kind of part... We didn't even set up... I guess we don't have to. This movie came out in 2004. If you're listening to this podcast, we assume
Hopefully you've
seen
it.
Right.
Go ahead.
But that's... Well, no, that's kind of part of the premise is that all of the characters are flawed in some way. That's the killer's whole shtick, is that he's trying to punish these people for wrongdoing or make them see the error of their ways. Mm-hmm. So all of the characters are flawed. All of them have some kind of shady secret or past. Even Danny Glover, the cop, the investigator, is kind of unhinged by the end. You wonder if maybe he's got something to do with it. So the fact that there's so many red herrings, everybody's a suspect, I think that adds to the suspense and the mystery. And the first time I saw it, I was absolutely blown away by the end. I had no idea. I didn't see it coming from a mile away. So they got me.
Yeah, me too. I had chills. The end scene when the guy gets up and goes and says, "Game over," and shuts that door.
Game over.
I know, and what an excellent conceit that is, to have the killer in the room the whole time, and right there in the middle,
So many
not concealed in any way. So clever. Now, I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know how still somebody could lay for 6 hours, and why wouldn't they see him breathing, etc., etc. But I don't know.
Maybe they do move when they're dead.
Maybe they do.
That's right.
Who knows?
Did it take you by surprise, Kristin?
Oh, of course. I didn't see it coming at all. But it was really interesting, the aspect that they played about each of these victims having something that was wrong with their life. Either they were doing bad things or whatever. It kind of... Sometimes, you watch shows and you just hope the bad guy gets it. You know what I mean? But then starting with a guy who you don't know is bad, seeing him get it, and then realize that this is what he had done wrong. He almost cheated on his wife, or what, all these things. You think, man, really nobody deserves that. No matter what it is they're doing.
That's the thing. Like, I think that there's part of me that wants to be like, oh, he's kind of this moral crusader. But then on the other hand, I'm like, it's kind of a prick move. Like, who are you to judge these folks? You know,
Right?
Well, like, I'm sorry you have cancer and you're dying, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to. Right.
Well, and then that is Jigsaw's fatal flaw, really. I mean, that is his problem, is this sort of punishment does not at all fit the crime. But that also overlooks a little bit more of his motivation, which is not just that you did something wrong, but that you don't appreciate life.
Right.
You don't appreciate what you have. And so I'm going to push you to the extreme to where you have to take some action on your own to save your life. And after you do that, you're going to appreciate it, and it's going to be the best kind of therapy you can do.
Right.
Presumably.
Except that you'll need therapy after for the rest of your life.
Well, you are. And again, if you lose, it was really not fair.
Right.
Right. But the only survivor that we know of came out feeling like she had learned something, like she had been helped.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sick and twisted, but I guess she just gets him.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of feel grateful that I'm not in those situations. So it helped me a little, I suppose.
Nice.
Well, so it starts out with these two guys in the room, and it reminded me a lot of these locked room mysteries, that are
Yes.
really popular right now.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite games on my phone. The escape the room ones.
Yeah.
I was hoping for more of an element of that, really.
Well, didn't you feel like there was some
there
of
was
that in
definitely
there?
some there. I mean, the kind of the mystery about the X and the heart
clues,
and where are the
right.
keys, but I wish it was kind of a little more centered on that. Does that make sense? I don't know.
Well, it is sort of the grounding of the film. The whole film is kind of told around those two characters, but you're right, it's not really all about them getting out of the room.
No, there's really only a couple of clues. I mean, and it starts out that way, with them having to decipher the messages, and then just little symbols and things in the room being clues that they can then, find things behind.
X marks the spot. Sometimes you see more with your eyes shut.
But that kind of peters off after the first
It does.
40 minutes or so.
Yeah, and it peters off. I mean, it's not really the same thing going into the rest of the series.
Right.
No, it's not.
I think part 2 has them trying to get out of a house that's all boarded up. That's maybe the closest it comes. And then from there on out, it's just people caught in traps.
Just
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Pretty much trying to get out of
Well,
them.
darn it.
Just a parade of traps loosely connected with some kind of unbelievably complicated story of people investigating and trying to find Jigsaw.
I think I remember liking part 2. Was part 2 the one where the girl had to put her hands up in the box
Yes,
and the razor?
with the razors.
Oh, that image.
Is that like poking your finger through the straw hole in a...
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly,
Or
except
like
it's razor blades.
like a Chinese finger trap.
Yeah, you try to pull them out, and that's when you start having problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a lot of really, really demented traps like that. And of course, obviously, as they go on through, 6 more movies?
Oh
or
my God, I
5
have
more
no idea.
movies?
At least 5. I think 6. I think there were 7 altogether.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you gotta really dig the bottom of the barrel to come up with brand new, interesting things.
Right.
And that's why it gets so gross and strange.
Yeah.
But it also gets extremely convoluted. And I mean, I don't know. We're talking about this movie. We're not really talking about the rest of them. But let me just tell you, I mean, you have to watch them from beginning to end. You have to start with 1 and go all the way through to 7 if you want to make any sense of parts 2 on.
Right. You'll have no idea.
They're not self-contained.
People come back from
They're
the
not.
dead. Or not back from the dead, but like people you think are dead come back.
And people who seem to be okay. It's similar kind of deals where people who escape Saw's tortures turn out to then be working for him, or then maybe they were working for him all along and they were in the trap as a decoy. I mean, all kinds of strange things. But that's what you do when you didn't expect this film to go to spawn
Keep
so many
going,
things.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so far, you know that they'll come back to this series eventually. It was too profitable for them not to. They said the last one was the last one, but they lie. They'll wait a handful of years
They'll
and
reboot
we'll get
it with new actors,
Oh,
maybe.
Saw Reborn.
You're absolutely. Well, they kind of have to once they run out of a few more series to a reboot.
right.
You know, we're on our third reboot of Texas Chainsaw, or third reboot of Halloween, right? Second reboot of Halloween.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, they have to. That cell phone is a flip phone. In 10 years, they're not even going to know what that is.
that's true. How much of this wouldn't have been an issue in today's society? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know. Well, his wife probably would have been tracking him.
Oh, probably.
You know,
absolutely.
knowing where he was
Probably.
going. From a filmmaking perspective, I thought I was really quite impressed. And I was impressed when I first saw it, but I was really overcome by the stylishness of it, that I'd never seen before. Now, like you said, Craig, that I've seen 1,000 movies like this, I kind of come back and compare it.
Right.
And as we said before, it's almost quaint. It's almost like going back and watching Pulp Fiction. Because now you've seen so many Quentin Tarantino-esques that the original that started it all, it's quieter, it's not as over the top. And so it just really kind of exposed to me some of the interesting... I mean, James Wan is a pretty talented director, I think. This being his first big movie, the way that he uses sequences I really liked. I liked the sequence with the camera, the flash bulbs.
That was spooky.
Yeah.
In the apartment. And I've seen that before.
Yeah.
He is not original to that, but it was very well done.
Yeah, it was very creepy.
Right.
Kristen, you were... I could tell you were very tense in that moment.
You were.
Well, it just so, I don't know, it so emphasizes that somebody's watching. So who else could be watching? It's scary.
I thought it was funny when he found the doll in there, and then he like beats it with a baseball bat. Like, dude, it's a doll. Yeah, right. Like,
was like,
maybe be a little bit more concerned about whoever put it there.
That's the bigger issue.
Maybe turn on a light instead of walking around in the dark for 10 minutes.
That was a good sequence, and I know what you mean. I feel like now it feels a little bit dated. It's almost got kind of a late 90s, early 2000s kind of music video feel to it. I'm thinking especially of the places where they do, oh my gosh, here's a big revelation. Let's flash back to all of those little things that you should have picked up along the way, but you didn't. And when there would be, you know, some real, I don't even know what they call it, Todd. What do they call that when it's like the real super fast...
Oh, just like when they overcrank the camera, so it's like everything's like super fast motion,
right?
And but also with that jerkiness added to it,
yeah,
like it's a handheld camera that's getting played through super fast.
Running around, yeah.
That was really stylish at the time, and now you don't really see it that much because it's kind of overplayed.
Well, and you probably noticed things, I never would have noticed. I read this on IMDb or somewhere, but he was very conscious of the style, and when it was filmed from Cary Elway's perspective, looking at Adam, it was very steady cam, and then when it was from Adam's perspective, it was more handheld, shaky to kind of try to play into their different characters. Which, if you notice, those things are interesting. I don't know if I would have picked up on it.
Well, it's the kind of thing that you're supposed to subconsciously take in,
right?
Not really notice outright. I certainly didn't notice it. But you're right. I mean, Adam was the guy who was immature. I mean, he's flat out Cary Elway's character. Larry calls him juvenile flat out. It's like, you're immature, and you can see that.
Definitely.
Right.
Whereas he seemed to be the more calm and collected. I'm a surgeon, but then breaks down
right up until the end. Right. When things go terribly wrong. Something that's interesting about the production is they did have to cut. I don't think that they had to cut any complete scenes. They had to trim it down. They had to trim down some of the gore. I know that they trimmed down some of the scene with the overweight guy in the razor wire. They had to cut some of that out. They had to cut some other stuff. But once they had done that, I don't know how they determined this, but they decided that they didn't have adequate footage. So they actually went back and did a lot of reshoots, but the cast had already gone. I mean, they were gone. So a lot of it when you see people from behind, like walking into and out of buildings, it's just Leigh Whannell in other people's costumes.
There's some woman's wig and
right,
like
exactly.
that. The hood, he's got a hood on.
Yeah, there's and there are also, and I only noticed this because I had read about it, but there are also lots of different places, especially where things are being revealed or whatever, where you just see hands working.
Oh yeah,
Leigh Whannell's hands, like when Amanda, the girl we were talking about before, when she's digging through the guts, those are Leigh Whannell's hands.
Oh,
so they fleshed it all out and just kind of cut and pasted things together, and that may have some impact on the final. Maybe that's why we get those choppy scenes. I don't know.
That's true. Well, no better way to sort of disguise the fact that maybe you've shot these weird than to give it sort of a gritty look and be flicking and flickering. The image is patchy so quick that you only get a sense of it. And what a happy accident that was then.
Yeah.
That it's again that's that sort of Spielbergian Jaws type thing where the less you see of it, sort of the better it is. I also thought of another film that did that really well. What's the one that takes place in space, where they basically find a portal to hell?
Oh, Event Horizon.
Event Horizon does that very effectively, where this little portal and what you see through the hellish portal is just nothing but almost subconscious flashes of things past you, but it is absolutely terrifying.
Oh gosh,
because your brain just fills in those blanks and it's gross.
Yeah. And that's another example of them having to cut. There were more extended. We're talking about a different movie now. Sorry. Anyway, wrapping up. There were a lot more extended scenes in that ended up getting put on the cutting room floor too. Yeah.
It's worse almost to not see it.
Yeah,
it really is.
You leave something to the imagination. I mean, that's not a big surprise.
We use that as parents all the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you say stuff like, "Go to bed, or you're not gonna like what happens." And you let them fill in the blanks.
Right.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
She might cut my stomach open.
Might. You never know.
I guess it depends on the child, huh?
Yeah. You're not going to like it, though.
But it is funny how, in retrospect, slow-paced this film is. It really takes its time. It is an 11-year-old film, and it didn't feel like it at the time I saw it, but now within the context of what's coming out now, it really does take its time.
Yeah, I think that people in general are getting a little bit tired with this style. You're not seeing it as much, and the stuff that you do see is typically direct-to-video. We seem to be kind of on a trend back towards paranormal, suspense type things, which, you know, is all well and good. I'm sure, you know, as trends do, this one will come back around after a while, but I can't really think of anything that's come out in this type of genre that has been of the kind of cinematic quality that this movie is. I mean, this movie, it's well made, whether you're into this genre or not. It's a well made movie, and the only one that I can really think of that I thought was a pretty good variant on the idea is Hostel 2. Not even Hostel 1. I think Hostel 2 is a really good.
Oh yeah. More so than Hostel 1.
I think so, yeah. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah. I get them both confused in my head.
They were creative. The Hostel 2 is the one that had the Lady Bathory scene, and girls
right.
were the
Yes.
main characters, which I thought was interesting.
That's true.
And again, I think it was a legitimately good movie, but I've seen so many of these just really gory, you know, going over the top, trying to make an impact that are just bad, you know, bad effects, stupid stories.
You reach a point where it's guts.
Yeah.
You can't get worse than it, so what do you do?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? If you turned a body inside out, that's as worse as it could be.
Yeah.
Then what?
Well, and this film and the films that followed it really stuck with the puzzle aspect. And to me, that was what got me about these films. Yes, as I said, the visceral aspect of it, the fact that I'm watching a movie that's difficult for me to watch and it's hard for me to find, was one part of it. But the other part of it was really, I just liked the mystery of who's it going to be. There's always a twist at the end of all these films. And so it becomes like, you know, it's like reading an O. Henry story every time. Part of the fun of it is to try to figure out and then experience the twist at the end. Right. And a lot of the movies you're describing, Craig, you know, are just, they're not like that.
Yeah,
they're
that's true.
Just gross and gory. It's like Friday the 13th, but we've added the torture porn aspect, you know, the torture aspect to it, and a lot more blood and guts, but it's really hollow and empty. The worst one for me was Wolf Creek. I saw Wolf Creek and I was pissed off.
Which one was that? Is that the
in Australia where the girls get
exploitation? Yeah,
and all it is there's some girls camping or people camping, and there's a crazy guy, and he grabs them and chains them up, and one by one brutally murders them until one of them gets away. I mean, it's what sort of everything I think devolved to. Yeah,
they seem, you know, those like that one. I watched it. I thought it was all right. I even watched the sequel. It was not all right. But some of them seem mean-spirited. You know what I mean? Like, it's like violence for violence sake, and they're light on storytelling. I mean, okay, there's a big scary guy in the desert who's going to chop us up. You know, okay, that's it. You know, that's the whole plot. I mean, here there was intricacy of plot, and that it just demonstrates more skill from everybody involved.
Well, and it's fun to watch, and a film's got to be kind of fun to watch, even, you know, despite the subject matter. And at some point, it ceases to be fun to watch somebody in pain and in horror. It's just sort of never ending, and to even know in the back of your mind, it may just end up with them dying too. Right. You know, like there's no point to it. It gets so nihilistic.
See, and I think that the sequels kind of fell into that. I think that the further along they went, it kind of became less. I mean, they still were very intricate with the storytelling, but it almost felt forced. It seemed just like, how are we going to keep this going so we can keep coming up with these interesting kills? And people wanted it. You know, they were making tons of money in the theater, so it's not, you know, they were meeting a demand, but it just, they kind of devolved, I think, over the course of the series.
I think you're right about that. If it hadn't been for my Halloween tradition, you know, I would have stopped at some point.
Did you see them all?
I did. I saw every single one of them in the theater, including the last one in 3D. And I was sad. I've got to admit, I was really sad. I was sad at the loss of that tradition. Like, there was no movie every Halloween after that I could just, all right, honey, I'm going by myself to the theater. I'm going to get my bag of popcorn. I'm going to sit. I'm going to watch this, and I'm going to come out, and I'm going to, you know, kind of kind of enjoy.
I don't think you were alone at all. I think a lot of people felt that way. You know, it was kind of a way to celebrate the season, which is nice. Paranormal Activity kind of took over.
And
I think that didn't it kind of came up against Saw there for a little while and
overtook it.
And
you're right. And now we're seeing a swing toward that direction of film.
Right. I don't know if I saw them all or not, but I do remember that I saw the 7th one, and I felt like the 7th one. I'm sorry for your loss, but I felt like the 7th one...
It's okay, I'm over it.
I felt like they did a good job of wrapping up the story, and in a really unexpected way. Yes. I'm just going to spoil it for you. Carrie Elways pops back up in the 7th one.
Yay!
You could go see the 7th one. But you got to see the other 5 in between.
And you find out that he's kind of been behind the scenes throughout the whole series, and we just never knew it. No, he's back. And I mean, it was kind of a fun way to...
How was he behind the scenes in this one?
He ends up working for Jigsaw, doesn't he? Or carrying on Jigsaw's work after Jigsaw dies?
Which, in retrospect, makes kind of sense, because it's the doctor and the patient. You know, it's the doctor who's been reformed, and so he's kind of seen it, and so now he's going to take a surgical precision to taking his patients, saving people like a doctor's supposed to, but not like a doctor's supposed to.
Giving them a quality of life afterwards.
Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but I feel like in the marketing for that last movie, they did a really good job of concealing the fact that Carrie Elways was going to be a part of it again. Yeah. And I don't remember when he pops up in the movie, but when he popped up, I felt... It was like a gift or a reward, like, yes! I knew I watched all these movies for some reason.
The twist to end all twists.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, despite its flaws, I mean, there are a lot of things that don't make sense in this film. Things always work out a little too perfectly for Jigsaw, especially as the sequels go. But in this one, it's a simple enough plot that it wasn't quite so bad. The fact that he's there the whole time, he could really put an end to everything whenever he wanted. Right. You know, by electrocuting them both to death. No matter whether the girls get away or whether, the cops start barreling down the door or whatever. As it goes, it gets so convoluted that it would be, it's ridiculous that he was such a good student of psychology to predict what people are going to do at any given time and go along. But, there's stuff like the cops going through by themselves into the lair. What kind of a photographer... surveillance, type photographer is using a flash.
Right.
There's just there's silly stuff in there that didn't need to be in there, but what are you going to say? I mean, again, the dialogue was kind of poor.
I don't mean to be critical of anybody's acting, but both main gentlemen were clearly trying to mask accents and not doing a terribly good job.
Oh, no.
I mean, that's really nitpicky, but you notice.
Oh,
and it kind of pulls you out.
Yeah, it really does.
Even if you didn't know their backgrounds, you would think something is wrong with them.
Something's wrong.
Their way of speaking.
Yeah, well, I will give... what's the guy's name who played Adam again? Lee. I will give Lee some credit. I didn't pick up it until, at least halfway through, I think. And I thought, wait a second, something's off. But Carrie, my homeboy Carrie, he needs to just decide what he is. Are you British?
He did slip quite a bit, especially
Are you American?
Yeah, especially in times of heightened emotion, he would really kind of slip up. And frankly, at the end of the movie, when he kind of goes off the ledge, I thought his performance was pretty over the top.
It was bad.
You're gonna be all right. You're just wounded in the shoulder. I have to go and get help.
Now, who's to say? I'm sure would be a blubbering mess in anything resembling that situation, but he's kind of level-headed all the way through, and then by the end, he's just simpering and crying on the floor.
And I just feel like a phone call was not enough motivation to just lose it all and cut off your foot at that moment after everything had already happened. Your time was already up.
Yeah.
Just figure it out from here.
Salvage the situation.
I guess.
I think what we were supposed to take away from it is that he had literally lost it. He had been pushed over the edge. I mean, the man's supposed to be a surgeon, and he saws off his foot with a hacksaw that he's been doling on a steel chain throughout the course of the entire movie.
Which came out of a rusty toilet. I mean, honestly, I'm not sure, even if he stops the bleeding, he's going to live after that.
Right. They have no idea where they are. I mean, I guess, what's the alternative? Stay in there forever, right? I guess he had to do what he had to do, but there's no way he's getting out of there.
There's no way he's going to crawl his way out of there as slow as he was going. But then, as slow as he was leaving, he turned around 2 more times.
Yeah. I'll be back. I promise I'll be back.
Turns back around. I'm not lying to you. I swear. I will go back.
I wouldn't lie to you.
Come back. Stay strong or whatever.
Yes. What if he got all the way out and then came back again?
Are you still okay? Good. I'll be right back.
Oh, goodness.
Well, this is the first time I'd seen it since the first time I'd seen it.
Really?
Yeah, I'd honestly not come back to see it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was just a slightly different movie in retrospect than I remembered it being, and I think that's a testament to its originality.
I agree.
At the time. But again, I felt that same feeling, whereas if I were now coming to this film, never having seen it, but having seen all the horror films I've seen in the midst that were inspired by it, it would seem a little, maybe, lame.
Yeah, at least middle of the pack. You know, I don't think that it would necessarily stand out the way that it did at the time, but you know, obviously it did. It hit the right notes for the time. I don't know if I've ever sat down and watched the whole thing, but around Halloween they play all these movies all the time. I catch little snippets of them here and there. It's a fun popcorn movie. You know, it's you're not gonna, I don't think, walk away from it with any kind of profound catharsis, but
I don't know. I mean, I do feel more grateful for my life now.
Well, good.
Yeah. I'm curious as to your final thoughts, Kristin.
Oh, my final thoughts.
Never having seen many horror films, certainly nothing like this before.
Not seen a lot of horror films.
Mother of small children.
Right. You know, I do feel like it was a little cheesy. I feel like throughout most of the whole middle part and into the end, it kind of was almost going for this psychological game.
Yeah.
But they weren't playing it well. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? Acting-wise, I felt like it was lacking a little, which is disappointing.
The sophistication you'd expect to see in,
right.
in the characters.
Well, it sounds silly, but it seems like there was so much time where it really was character-driven, at least for the the plot to progress, and it wasn't happening a lot. Do you know what I'm saying there? I liked it. I don't know that I'd watch it again, but I'm glad for the experience. There were a lot of moments where I just got to chuckle at things, and I thought that was great. I really liked the moment where Zeb calls out for the doctor's wife.
Yeah. the murder. The wife has escaped, and the murderer. Where are you?
Like she's gonna pop out and go, I'm over here.
Yeah, there were funny little parts like that. Would you say that you thought that it was scary or just gross? Because I don't know. I guess the idea of finding yourself in that circumstance is unsettling, but I can't. It seems so implausible.
Right.
I don't know if I would say it was really a scary film. Really, I mean, without all the gore, it plays more like a suspense movie. Really,
like a mystery.
Yeah.
Like Columbo.
With not enough suspense, but
maybe.
Yeah. I think that I was wanting them to be more level-headed. They were making choices, and I thought, well, that's just stupid. Why would you do that?
Welcome to horror.
That's right. I was going to say, you always run up the stairs instead of out the front door.
Right.
That's generally what happens.
That's true. But yeah, I don't know if that's a writing thing, but I would love to see a horror film where they make all the right choices. And it's still scary. Do you know what I mean? Because I think there's so many things that are just, they just put themselves there because they made dumb choices.
There are the ones where sometimes the characters are very self-aware and, say, I feel like I'm in a horror movie, and then, like Cabin in the Woods does a good job of playing really tongue-in-cheek with that. And there's some others like that, but this is pretty standard as far as the decision-making skills of horror characters.
Well, and part of that, too, though, is that horror as a genre, and a lot of people don't realize this, especially if they only know it from afar, has a pretty strong morality behind it. I mean, it's a twisted morality, and again, it's sometimes not the justice that you deserve. But the girls who have sex get it. The people who make poor choices are getting it. And it's unfair sometimes because, when you're in the moment, of course you're going to make poor choices. But because of that, it may be rare to see a horror film sort of like this one where everyone's doing the right thing and still getting screwed. That slips to me into the bothersome section. That's when it starts to feel more nihilistic for me.
This certain genre of film is interesting to me. This sort of torture porn type of horror, because I feel like it's just pain. You know, once you feel the pain, then what?
But
you know what I mean?
Right, but it appeals to that basic human fear. You know, we all do whatever we can to avoid pain. Especially, you know, as gruesome, as terrible as some of these things are.
Well, I've never broken a leg, you know?
Right,
and
no.
If somebody were to say, break your leg, and then, you know, you'll continue to live or something.
Right.
That is, as bizarre as that is a tough call.
Yeah.
You know? It is a strange, tough call.
It was interesting to hear your perspective, Kristin, being a kind of a novice in the genre. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for coming and joining us.
I appreciate it.
You know, it was a great idea. And I think, actually, in retrospect, a pretty good film to bring you in on.
Cool.
Not bad.
Not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
And it was fun. It was fun for me to kind of get to sit next to you and see when you were tensing up and talking nervously. Todd's boring.
Craig and I just sit and take notes the whole time. We're so jaded by now. Well, thank you so much for listening to this edition of Two Guys and a Chainsaw. Kristin, thank you so much for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
It's been wonderful having you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. Check out our website. I'm still doing my 31 Days of Horror, so you can go to toddcoons.com, where I have review a new horror movie every day. We're coming to the close of the month. Once again, this is Todd.
And Craig.
And Kristin.
With Two Guys and a Chainsaw.